All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're going deep into the world of cybersecurity. We've got a ton of news articles and reports.
Yeah, hot off the presses.
Exactly. So think of this as your quick guide to what's actually happening, beyond just the headlines.
We're going to be talking about some big legal battles going on, some shadowy hackers, and some vulnerabilities that are lurking in some pretty unexpected places.
I'm already hooked, so let's get started with one that kind of feels like a legal thriller, like something out of a John Grisham novel.
Yeah.
Delta Airlines, they're suing CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike!
Yeah, the cybersecurity firm.
Wow.
So they're kind of in this battle, this blame game over that huge system outage that crippled Delta back in July. 7,000 flights canceled.
Oh, wow.
That's not just, a PR nightmare. That is a logistical meltdown.
Yeah, and a $500 million loss is what Delta's saying. They're claiming that a CrowdStrike software update, that's what started this whole mess. But CrowdStrike's pushing back and saying, hold on a second, Delta. Your IT systems are about as up-to-date as like a flip phone.
Oh, snap.
In a world of smartphones. So now the DOT is investigating.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating, right? You've got this clash of the titans. And whatever the result is, it could actually change how we think about cybersecurity and accountability.
Yeah, this isn't just like, oh, who's going to pay the bill for a few canceled flights? This is setting a precedent, right?
Right.
Like who is ultimately responsible when software goes wrong, especially like in something like air travel where like one little glitch can have ripple effects across the globe.
Yeah, exactly. Think about like what this means for people developing software. Imagine the pressure to create like totally perfect bulletproof code when, just one little error could lead to all these lawsuits and investigations.
Yeah.
It makes you kind of wonder, like, what's the future of innovation in cybersecurity? Do we go for speed or security? Or can we have both?
That is a heavy question. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about those Chinese hackers who broke into U.S. telecom providers. The FBI and CISA, they put out warnings saying they're going after commercial infrastructure, probably for espionage. This isn't just some random act of like cyber vandalism. This is targeted, strategic.
Very much so. And when you start digging a little deeper, it gets even more interesting. The tactics and the targets, they line up with a group that we've seen before, Salt Typhoon.
Salt Typhoon.
Yeah, they've been linked to attacks on big telecom companies before, like Verizon and AT&T. What's really interesting is how persistent they are and how focused. Why are they so obsessed with telecom?
Yeah, what are they after? Are they after trade secrets?
Yeah.
Or do they want to just like shut down communication networks? Maybe they're planting back doors for future attacks.
Right.
But it's a little unsettling when you think about the possibilities. And to make things even more tense, Canada is reporting a surge in activity from Chinese state-sponsored hackers too.
So this isn't just a problem for the U.S., it's global. It really shows how connected our digital world is. One attack on, one country's infrastructure can have a ripple effect that impacts businesses and individuals, way beyond the initial target.
Wow. Okay, so we've gone from corporate drama to international intrigue, and it's all happening in the cyber world. Now let's move to a story that sounds like it could have a Hollywood ending or maybe a plot twist we didn't see coming. Remember that Bitfinex hack back in 2016?
Yeah, I remember that.
So a U.S. government wallet that was linked to that case got hacked, and they lost like $20 million in crypto.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a headline that makes you like clench a little bit.
It does, but get this. Authorities actually recovered almost all of it.
What?
$19.3 million.
Seriously?
In 24 hours.
Oh, way.
Yeah, so now that's a headline that makes you go, wait a minute.
Yeah, how is that even possible? Did the hacker like suddenly develop a conscience, or did they accidentally like leave a trail, like digital breadcrumbs back to them?
Right.
This has got to be more than just luck.
Right. Yeah. Blockchain analysts, they're digging in, trying to figure out how this all happened. Was it an inside job? Did law enforcement, set a clever trap? Or maybe the hacker just completely underestimated the power of blockchain forensics?
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me that the world of crypto, it's a little bit like the Wild West.
Yeah.
There's risk, there's reward, and sometimes there's just an ending you never saw coming.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the Wild West, let's talk about the outlaws.
Yeah.
There was a big win for law enforcement. Dutch police, they disrupted two big players in this whole password stealing game.
Okay.
Redline and Meta.
Oh, yeah, those names sound familiar.
Yeah, those names probably ring a bell. They were involved in that big Uber data breach a while back.
Right, right, right.
And a bunch of others, too. These networks, they've been operating under the radar since 2020. They've been grabbing sensitive data and tools for cyber attacks on a huge scale. But the Dutch police, in a coordinated operation, it was nicknamed Operation Magnus. They managed to seize servers and disrupt their operations. It's a huge victory, taking down these digital kingpins and hopefully preventing countless attacks in the future.
That's a good point. It reminds us that even in this vast, seemingly anonymous world of the internet, there are people out there fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. But it feels like for every win, there's always a new threat emerging. And right now, scammers, they're setting their sights on the most vulnerable among us, people who are just, desperate for work in a tough economy.
Yeah, these job scams, they're spreading like wildfire. It's really insidious. They prey on hope, on desperation. They lure victims in with all these promises of, easy money, remote work opportunities, things that sound almost too good to be true. And sadly, a lot of times they are.
These scammers are using messaging apps like Telegram and WhatsApp to create these almost cult-like communities.
Wow.
Where they share these fake success stories and pressure people into making deposits for bogus technical issues. It's sickening. They're not just stealing money, they're stealing hope.
And they're doing it on platforms that are meant for connection and communication, which makes it even harder to spot the warning signs.
Yeah.
It just shows how important it is to be skeptical, especially when money is involved. If something just feels wrong, trust your gut and do some research before you give away any personal information or money.
So we've got law enforcement taking down major cybercrime rings, but at the same time, you've got these individual scammers weaving their way into our lives through seemingly harmless messaging apps. It's a constant cat and mouse game, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It definitely is. And as we'll see, the playing field, it just keeps expanding from the dark corners of the web to, well, let's just say some unexpected places, maybe even in our own homes, to the devices we use in our homes, the things that are supposed to make our lives easier. We're talking about the Internet of Things, all those smart gadgets that are popping up everywhere.
Oh, the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
Right. So what kind of vulnerabilities are we talking about here? I mean, is my smart toaster going to turn my breakfast into charcoal?
Well, I haven't heard of any weaponized toasters yet, but there are some real concerns when it comes to IoT security. Take those older Philips smart bulbs, for instance, the ones with the outdated firmware. They can actually put your entire home Wi-Fi network at risk.
Wait a minute. My light bulb could be a gateway for hackers. How is that even possible?
Well, it comes down to this. There's weak security in those older firmware versions. Hackers can exploit those weaknesses and potentially steal your Wi-Fi login info. And basically, once they have that, they have access to everything on your network.
So it's like leaving your front door open. Except the front door is a light bulb. Okay, that's a little unsettling. But can you just fix that with a software update?
Yeah, you're right. Keeping your device firmware up to date is super important. Those updates often include security patches that fix known vulnerabilities. Think of it like, doing maintenance on your house. You wouldn't ignore a leaky faucet, right? So you shouldn't ignore those firmware update notifications either.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so smart bulbs, check.
Yeah.
What else should we be thinking about when it comes to IoT security?
Well, remember we talked about that expanding attack surface. It's not just individual devices. It's the whole supply chain. Every single component in your laptop, for example, like the processor, the SD card reader, all of those things could have vulnerabilities that impact the security of your device. It's like a chain reaction. One weak link can compromise the whole system.
So even if I'm, really good about updating my software, there could still be a flaw in some tiny component that I don't even know about. And that could put my whole system at risk.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. And we're seeing that happen right now with Realtek's SD card reader driver. It's a component that's used in a lot of laptops, big brands like Dell, Lenovo, HP, MSI. Researchers have found multiple vulnerabilities that could allow an attacker to bypass Windows security and get into your system.
Okay, now I'm starting to get nervous. But Realtek has released a patch to fix those vulnerabilities, right?
They have. But here's the problem. It takes time for those patches to get rolled out.
Wow.
Even though the fix is available, it takes time for laptop manufacturers to incorporate it into their updates and then for users to actually install those updates. So there's this gap where a lot of devices are still vulnerable.
So it's like a waiting game, hoping that our devices get updated quickly enough. Is there anything we could do in the meantime to protect ourselves?
Being aware is a good first step. Knowing about these vulnerabilities can help you be more careful about what websites you visit, what files you download, and what links you click on. It's also a good reminder to back up your important data just in case something does happen.
Okay, backup, check. Vigilance, check. So far, we've got vulnerable smart bulbs, risky SD card readers, hackers going after telecom companies and government wallets. It feels like we're surrounded. Is there any good news in cybersecurity these days?
There is. The good news is that we're all getting smarter about security, as individuals and as organizations. Take identity and access management, or IAM. It's all about strong authentication and controlling access to sensitive data. A recent report showed that weak or stolen login credentials are responsible for almost 70% of cyber attacks, especially those that target supply chains.
So those weak passwords and shared logins, they're like a hacker's dream come true.
Exactly. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and managing user access carefully, those are the foundation of a secure digital fortress. It might seem like a hassle, but it's incredibly effective in preventing a huge number of attacks.
So strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, got it. But it seems like even with all the security measures in place, those with bad intentions are always finding new ways to get through.
It's true. Cybercriminals are always adapting. And as traditional methods become less effective, they're turning to more sophisticated approaches, like AI-powered scams. These scams are particularly dangerous because they use artificial intelligence to create very personalized and very convincing attacks that can fool even the most tech-savvy people. One example is AI-powered business email compromise, or BEC scams, which are becoming more common, especially in manufacturing.
AI-powered scams. This is getting into science fiction territory. How does that even work?
Imagine you get an email that looks like it's from your boss. It's written in their style, it uses their usual language, it even includes details that are specific to your work, but it's not actually from your boss.
That's from an AI pretending to be my boss.
Exactly. These scams use AI to look at huge amounts of data, like emails, social media posts, even public records, to craft these incredibly convincing and personalized phishing emails.
Wow. So AI is basically taking social engineering to a whole new level. It's like having a master manipulator whispering in your ear, designing the perfect message to trick you.
It's a scary thought, and it means we have to be even more cautious with emails, especially those that involve urgent requests or financial transactions.
Right. So always double check the sender's address. Look for anything in the language that seems off. And if you have any doubts at all, pick up the phone and verify the request directly with the person.
Yeah, exactly. Trust your instincts. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And if an email raises any red flags at all, don't be afraid to question it.
So we've gone from worrying about hackers breaking into our computers to worrying about AI tricking us with emails. It feels like the threats are getting sneakier and harder to spot.
And that's why it's so important to keep learning about cybersecurity. The threats are constantly changing, new vulnerabilities are being discovered all the time, and the methods cybercriminals use are becoming more and more complex.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah.
We need to stay informed, adapt our strategies, and be proactive about our digital security.
Absolutely. Whether it's reading articles, listening to podcasts like this one, or attending workshops, there are tons of resources out there to help you stay ahead of the curve.
I know. It can feel overwhelming, like we're always playing catch up with the bad guys.
I understand that feeling. But it's important to remember that while the threats are real, there are also effective strategies and tools to mitigate those risks.
So it's about finding a balance
Yeah,
between awareness and action.
exactly. Cybersecurity doesn't have to be a daunting task. By understanding the threats, putting basic security practices in place, and staying informed, you can navigate the digital world with confidence.
We've covered a lot of ground today. From high-profile hacks to the rise of AI-powered scams, it's been a whirlwind tour of the cybersecurity landscape. I have to admit, I'm feeling a mix of informed and a little terrified.
I think that's a healthy response. Awareness is the first step towards action, and remember, it's a collective effort. By sharing knowledge, promoting best practices, and supporting each other, we can create a safer and more secure digital world for everyone.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in. We've gone from like smart bulbs to AI scammers in what feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there is feeling a little overwhelmed, you're definitely not alone.
It's easy to get lost in the details, but let's zoom out for a sec and look at the bigger picture. Like, what are the main takeaways here? What can people actually learn from all this and use in their own digital lives?
Right. Good point. Let's take a breath and break this down to like The essentials. So if there's one thing you want listeners to remember as they're, navigating this crazy world of cybersecurity, what would it be?
I think the most important thing is to kind of shift our mindset. Cybersecurity, it's not just about like a bunch of tools or a checklist of things to do. It's an ongoing process. It's how we think. It's being willing to stay informed and adapt.
So it's not about like achieving this perfect security, because that's probably impossible, right?
Yeah.
It's more about being aware of the risks, knowing how the bad guys are changing their tactics, and constantly learning and adapting our own strategies.
You got it. It's about having that healthy skepticism, trust but verify. Don't just click on links without thinking. Don't give out personal information without, really considering it. And if something just feels off, trust your gut and do some digging.
So be curious, be cautious, and be prepared. And remember, knowledge is power. The more we know about the threats and how to protect ourselves, the less scary the digital world becomes.
Absolutely. And don't forget to have a little fun along the way. Cybersecurity doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. There's a whole world of cool technology and exciting innovations out there. So embrace it, explore it, and learn how to do it safely.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's all about balance, between being aware and actually enjoying all the amazing things technology has to offer. So on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the wild world of cybersecurity. Hope you found it informative, maybe a little eye-opening, but most of all, empowering.
And if this deep dive sparked your curiosity, remember there's a ton of information out there. So stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe online.
Until next time.